Welcome to Comfortable Conversations. I'm your host, Jas Kirk, where we dive into the greatest gift life can offer us, discomfort. These honest yet comfortable conversations we will have are essential as your life is your canvas. In each episode, I will share practical wisdom and personal stories that guide you through life's big questions, encouraging growth, self-discovery, and deeper connections in your everyday life. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited to have our guest this week, Shannon Jamail. And I kind of have to go on a rant of how I met her, how we got connected and introduced. I was actually on a run. The morning I went on this run, I thought about the word surrender. And I was like, oh, Jas, you really need to surrender. And so I'm on my run. It's a beautiful day here in Texas. So it wasn't too hot, wasn't too cold. It was the fall time. It's usually the season of like my winter. And so I'm on this run and there's this book exchange that I happen to pass. And something in me says, stop. And so I do. Like when I get these inklings, I always stop. And so I was like, okay, what about this book exchange is calling you? So I go to it, I open it, and I see this book, and I have the book with me, Surrender to Love. And there's actually a bookmark in the book as well, Surrender to Love. So it's perfectly like everything. And I was like, God, are you sending me a message today? Is this the message? And I took the book, and I was like, okay, you got to read it. I start reading the first few pages, and I was like, oh, it's deep. I'm going to put it down. I was like, you're not ready to surrender to love yet. And so months later, I finally got that inkling again. Like surrender came up and I picked up Surrender to Love by Shannon Jamail. And this book was moving in a way that I was like, how awesome would it be if this woman would come on the podcast and talk to our listeners? And so in Jas form, I slid in her DMs and I said, hey, I found you. Would you be willing to come on this podcast and talk about surrendering to love from a space of this very holistic, like not just love with your partner, but like surrendering to love in life and that being like the key. So Shannon, I know that was long, but like, thank you for writing this book. Thank you for the work that you do with mind, body, like, welcome.
Thank you. I have like chills on my body for so many reasons. The serendipity of it and the fact that you were running when you first found it, because I've now found my new calling for love of running and just did my first half marathon. And
Congrats.
Really changed my life in so many good ways. So I just think this whole thing is like the circle of life of like, oh my goodness, see how love works.
Yeah, see how it all works 100%. Like, and even in the moments of like when you pick something new up, like there's so many themes here. So my first question to you is like, what discomfort led you to this version of yourself? In the book, you go super deep and share your story, but maybe give our listeners like that discomfort.
Yeah, I think first I'll just say that I feel like we all, if we are open to it, and it's really hard to be open to it sometimes when we're in the middle of it, but if you're open to it, it's those discomforting places, the painful ones that give us the most growth, truly. Whether we're able to receive it at that moment, or even there's some people maybe who will never be able to, and I want to give grace on that as well, but it's through my own discomfort, through my own traumas, through my own pain, and then combining that with the demographic that that I used to work with. I used to be a mental health therapist, so people would come to me with their trauma and their pain, and just really combining those two, like what I had carried, and then what these people are carrying, and really what every human that's walking this earth is carrying in some form or other, and knowing that, man, if we could just sit with it and surrender to it, which sounds super vulnerable and scary and like, what the heck is she talking about? But if we truly
Yeah.
can surrender to it and just ask, like, what am I supposed to learn in this? Like, even with our tech issues at the beginning, like, what are we
Yeah.
supposed to learn in this? Is it just like, let's put some laughter to this? Let's just release like, it's got to be perfect. You know what I mean? Like, there's
Yeah.
always just something that we could surrender to when we're in difficult moments. And it just really came to a head for me after working, for years really with people who were suffering and struggling and knowing that I had been in that space too and that I've come to a different space and I'm helping these people come to a different space one at a time and really just then saying, well, let me just share my story with whoever else needs to hear it. If it's one other person that reads this and says, man, she's been through the shit of it, I've been through the shit of it, we can do this, like we can really do this.
And
Um,
you talk about the going through the shit of it. And I think when I read that in the book, I was like, we do go through the shit of it. And you have to say it like that because it's like it sucks and it's okay to own that it sucks. Can you share that like story? Because I think your story is so relatable and like transformative in the sense of like where you were and like the life you experienced to who you are now is like jaw dropping, like awe and magnificent.
oh, thank you. And I'm super grateful for all of it, truly. So, I had a very, we'll call it tumultuous childhood. There was physical abuse and sexual abuse, and even at one point, I was homeless as a 14-year-old and just kind of bopping from car to car and couch to couch. And so, just that was the bulk of it. And then taking that and trying to become an adult with all of that, and being a single mom at 18 years old, and just all of those really lovely things that just were heavy. There's a lot of
Yeah.
heaviness in there without getting into all the details. And then trying to be a productive adult now being a mother. And it was just not not an ideal situation.
Yeah.
However, from all of that, at some point, and it was in my late teens, so 18, 19, 20, that I really started looking at this like, okay, I can continue down this path that I'm going, these decisions I'm making, and I could blame my parents or blame the people that hurt me. I mean, you really can. You can stay there for a really long time. Or I can pick up my bootstraps literally and say, okay, well, what am I going to do with this? How
Yeah.
can I learn from this? Where can I take this? And this is in bits and pieces. It didn't all happen at once. It didn't happen right at 18 or right at 20 or even right at 25. It kind of was bits and pieces of going, okay, I've got to work through
Incremental
this.
moments of like little shifts, little habits that were like, maybe if I shift this little thing, but you got out of your victim story. Like, I
Yeah, and
think
I'm
so
glad you
many,
said it
yeah.
that way. Yeah, because there were little shifts. I made a shift at age 17 when I said, okay, I've got to go back to high school and finish high school. I made a shift at 19, 20 years old as a single mom looking at my son going, okay, I've got to make better choices than were made for me when I was a child. I made a shift in my 20s to say, okay, how can I really help myself in a better way? And that's when I went
Yeah.
and, into college and got my master's. And so you're right. It's these little incremental shifts like, okay, I'm at this crossroad and how can I make a better decision than what was made in the past?
Yeah.
And that is the growth, right? Is learning, okay, that was really painful, that situation, whether I did it or not, whether someone else did it and I was the um, recipient of it, it doesn't matter. But how can I make a better decision because of that? How can I learn from that? And I can honestly sit here today and tell you that all of that hurt and pain and abuse, honest to goodness, I wouldn't wish it away. I would not
Yeah.
wish it away. I would not sit here and say I wish it hadn't happened. Not in any shape or form. I wouldn't wish that I had been homeless. I wouldn't wish that I had dropped out of school. I wouldn't wish any of that because I know for a fact if I hadn't, I wouldn't have the heart and empathy that I have today. I wouldn't be able to connect with people who are in pain and maybe give them a tiny little light to hold on
Yeah.
to say there is something on the other side of this and it's really really effing great, you know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
really great on the other side of it. And so I don't regret not one bit of it. If
You
anything,
embrace the shit of it. Like, you really did
yes,
embrace it. Yeah.
yeah,
I
all
think,
the way. If anything, I maybe if there's ever a regret in my life, it's that I didn't start to try to reach out to people sooner.
yeah.
I didn't start doing that until I was in my late 30s. But is that even late? Who knows? It doesn't matter. It was all perfect timing. I'm just super, super grateful that, I'm here today and I get to share this story and I get to tell people that there's always an opportunity to learn and grow, even in the crap of it. Like there really is.
Well, I love that. And if you guys please get the book. And the way Shannon shares this story is just so beautiful, and it makes you really want to own your story. So when you talk about like being grateful and you wouldn't wish any of it away, it's like when you do get to that other side of that version of yourself, you're like, you can have such, when you talk about the empathy for other people, you actually have that empathy and compassion and love and grace for yourself. Like, man, you really moved through something. Look how strong you are. And so, yeah, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to say that's really good stuff because I really think at the end of the day, one of my favorite sayings is by Mother Teresa, and it's like, if you want to heal the world, you start with yourself.
Yeah.
You can't even offer to others what you don't have. It might be
Yeah.
a surface form of it. You know what I mean? It might be this surface form of what you think it is. But until you offer love and grace to yourself, until you wholly accept yourself, until you like really can embrace all of those parts, even the dark parts of us that still think nasty thoughts or still like
Yeah.
go down a place where you really wish you hadn't. It doesn't matter. Like if you can embrace all of that and offer so much grace and love for yourself, that's where the real magic happens because then you can truly extend that to somebody else. But it always, always starts in your home, in your own
Within,
heart.
yeah. I always said the light, the joy, the grace, the inspiration has to like radiate within. Like it has to come from within and then it radiates outward. That you're not putting effort to externally do anything. It's all that internal work that's like shining and shining extremely bright. When it comes to this concept of surrendering to love, you really shared that in a way that it was not relational to just like a platonic partner or like when you think about marriage, you applied it in a way that was to everything in life. Can you kind of share with people what that looks like? Why surrender to love? Why does fear come up in that? And then what you actually looked at fear as?
This is a great question. I think it comes down to what's the most loving and best decision you can make in every scenario that you're presented with. And really, it's the tough ones because, I mean, how easy is it to be loving and kind when everything's lovely?
Yeah.
It's a little easier. It's more when the painful parts come up or the challenges or an obstacle or criticism when those things come up and even on down to like somebody cuts you off in their car like it's like how can you make the most loving and best decision in that moment or what is it sometimes it's walking away sometimes it's sending love to someone from a distance. I'm real famous for saying in my mind anyway that even if it's a close family member if you know that that relationship is toxic or you know it's not healthy for you or however you have designed that relationship is just not what will be good for your life that you send them love from a distance. Nobody said that you had to be close to even your closest family members, parents and otherwise. And so whatever that most loving and best decision is in those difficult times. And as hard as those decisions are to make, like that's where you sit with it. You surrender to that loving decision. And so
Yeah.
sometimes it's ending a relationship. Sometimes it's nurturing a different relationship that you didn't think, you would ever be in that place to do. It's just really coming down to that. And then as far as fear, my biggest thing with fear, especially today, and man, as you get older, holy cow, you would think the fears get less. Come on, God, what's
No.
going on? It
Every
doesn't.
day they're like, hey, I'm here. Don't forget.
Don't forget. So don't forget. And really, I have since I wrote the book, and man, it's been testing me still every day, and it's just doing it afraid. Like when there's something that's coming up, and you know it's the best, most loving decision, but it's scary as hell. You do it afraid. You
Yeah.
doesn't. There's no courage. Isn't the lack of fear. It
Yeah.
isn't. It's doing it despite it. And so anything that's going to be challenging, anything that's going to help you grow the most, anything that's going to probably have tons of reward, whether it's now or later, is going to be fear based. It's going to have fear in it anyway, of some sort,
Yeah.
whether it's excitement fear, nervous fear, holy crap fear. an example is I ran my first marathon just recently, and I let me just be, here's some TMI. I was so nervous, my stomach was on fire. Okay, everything
Yeah.
was on fire. I hadn't even yet done 13 miles in all of my training. I'd only gone up to 10 miles, and 10 miles about
Yeah.
whooped me. And so, and I was so. I mean, my stomach was in such knots. I'm like, I know how I'm going to run fast. I'm going to have to run fast for each of these porta pots is what I'm going to have to do
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
my stomach is, and so, and I was like, but that's okay. I'm just going to do it afraid. I'm going to do it afraid. I'm going to put one foot in front of the other and do it afraid. And on the other side of that, despite my knees and everything else, it was like, that was the best feeling in the world. And that is like the story of life.
Yeah.
Almost always on the other side of fear is like the most exhilarating feeling ever. And even if it's not in that moment, it will be later because you have learned so much from it.
Yeah. When I ran my first half, I had never run 13.1 miles, and I had always ran with headphones. And this day, like my AirPods died out at mile 11, and this guy started singing Amazing Grace. At literally as my AirPods, he was just singing Amazing Grace. And then as I got closer to the finish line, this man who was like 85, 90 years old was running next to me, and he said, "Will you run with me through the finish line?" And I said, yes, because we were at the same pace. I was struggling, but I was like, "You're going to make it. You got this." And when I crossed the finish line, I thought to myself, it was so blissful. No matter, like, as you said, your knees feel away. You're like, I've drank so much. I've taken so much hydration. My stomach was full. I was like, oh my God, I overdid it. But this thought of like, this is who God knows we are. Even when it's really, really hard, he knows that we are able and capable to go beyond our limit. So he always like dangles the thing up here so we can rise to it. And you have to go within to say, what am I willing to do? What grit, what courage, what strength can I just hold on to? Like when my AirPods died, I was like, you have never ran. Now you actually have to hear yourself breathe? Lord. Like, girl. But it was so I can relate to that feeling of like, oh my God, but you finish and you're like, it's crazy I did that. And that's when I signed up for the marathon. I was like, if I can do a half, oh, God really knows I got the other half in me. So
You go, girl. Because I told my best friend, I said, if I say that, punch me in the throat at the end. Because, you are so like high on just like you did it. And I'm like, if I say we want to do a marathon next, you just punch me right in the throat.
you
No,
said,
but
don't
we are
let
doing,
me.
we've committed to doing at least one half every year. So we're going to do Houston next time. But you said something that is so like powerful. And that is that God, whatever your belief system is, if you pray for something, you're not going to get that thing. You're going to get the work up to that thing, like
Yeah.
patience, right? How many times do people pray for patience? Well, you're going to get tested on your patience so that you
Yeah.
could get more patience, right? So whatever it is that you're asking for, that you think you need, or just desire in your life, it's going to be up here. Like it's going to be up here. If it was, can you imagine? Let's just be honest. Can you imagine if everything was given to you, like literally just handed over to you? What would we even strive for in life? I
You
mean,
wouldn't.
we almost have to have contrast, right? And not
Yeah.
everybody's contrast has to be as dark as maybe mine. And there's others that are much, much darker. But you have to have contrast, right? You have to have that contrast. That's the only way we even appreciate the light. That's the only way we even appreciate these blessings and the beauty around us. And as Glennon Doyle says, I love, it's brutal, right? It's both brutal and beautiful. And
Yeah.
so that's what life is. And so, yeah, man, we're gonna dangle that carrot. It's never gonna be a full marathon. I'm just gonna tell you that right now. But
Yeah. But
there's gonna be that carrot, right? That maybe it's to go a little faster at something. Maybe it's to add one more thing. Maybe it's to deepen a relationship. Maybe whatever it is. But it's gonna require work and grit, like you said, and perseverance and the ability to say, I got this, despite whatever's coming my way. I'm gonna do it
yeah,
afraid. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be terrified. My legs are going to be shaking, but I'm going to do it anyway.
I'm going to do it anyway. It was years ago. Someone shared with me, I didn't understand why, like, some things came easier to other people. Like a mentor of mine, he was an ambassador for Polo Ralph Lauren. And he said to me, Jas, I can connect you with this person right now, but I'm not. And I was like, how come I always got to work hard for something? Why can't just like land in my lap? And it wasn't, he ended up passing away. And years later, when I became a Lululemon ambassador, I was like, I get it. Like, I get why you needed me to work for it and the meaning of it. And during that time, someone said to me, when you're handed things, you don't treat it the same way as when you worked for it, and it's more meaningful. So it's like, it always stuck with me, like, oh, you worked for that, and you're going to, the work it took to maintain being there, and you'll sustain yourself, because we'll pray for things, we'll ask for goals, we'll do all this work. But if you don't level to that version of yourself, you really can't sustain it, in mindset and physical body and spiritual body. It's not going to sustain, it can't stay in your world. So that is one thing of like, it's, as you're growing and getting out of your victim story, and you really start to build, you understand, like, it all makes sense. It all aligns. And this is helping me. This is exactly what I prayed for.
It is
It doesn't
exactly
look
what you prayed for. And you know what? The only way you'll know that, though, is that through that surrender. That surrender allows you to be just a tiny bit quiet, to
mm,
hear, to hear your body, your spirit, your intuition, God tell you, sorry, I know it's going to be hard and afraid, but you're going to do this, right?
yeah.
And you have to surrender into that. So you're feeling pain and heaviness and indecision and all these things. And you're right, victim, whatever it is that you're feeling, you're blaming, you're mad, you're all these things. If you could surrender to all of that, just surrender to it, be a little bit quiet, you'll hear that, nope, you're going to pick up one foot and release that victimhood. You're going to pick up another foot and offer grace and forgiveness. You're going to pick up another foot and reach out to this person. You're going to pick up another, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and do the hard thing. You're going to do the
Yeah.
hard thing despite the fear, because I mean, on the other side of it is so much beauty.
Yeah. And so, as you even talk about that, I kind of want to get into like your retreats, the work you do now. Can you share with the people?
Yeah. So I used to have my mental health practice, and during COVID, I stopped having a private practice because we were opening up our retreat center here in Texas. We're about, I think, about four-ish, maybe 3.5 hours away from you. And we host retreats all year long. I travel and host retreats. I've been doing retreats in total, though, for over 15 years. But we opened our retreat center here in Marble Falls, Texas, about 4 years ago. And I love it. People come here and they're setting down the heaviness a little bit so they can surrender and like tune in to what they're needing and what their body's needing and their hearts are needing. And they're going to have fun while they do it too. It's not going to be all heavy and, oh my goodness, dig into that pain. It's going to be horseback riding and skeet shooting and some yoga and delicious foods and, hanging out at the pools. And so it's a kind of a combination of like, let me set down my daily to-do list, my daily chores, my responsibilities. Let me set all that down so that I can be quiet enough so I can surrender and listen to what I need while I'm also having fun and connecting to other people. So it's really fun. It's something that I just love to do.
How do you encourage people to try out a retreat? Because I think some people may go in expecting one thing, or some people may think it's all woo woo and you're 100% quiet and you're at a temple and all of those things. Like, can you take people through those different experiences and why you've began to curate these and work with other people to teach them how to host retreats and things like that?
Yes, that's a really good question. Since COVID, especially, I have seen more people show up who've never been on a retreat before and
Yeah.
are terrified. Talk about doing it afraid,
Yeah.
especially for women, because I pretty much only host women, and women to travel to a new place by themselves. Some of them bring a friend, but a lot of them are coming by themselves. And they're coming, like you said, is this going to be woo woo? Is this going to be like taking drugs and then having these weird hallucinations? Like, what the heck's going to happen in this stuff, right? And so,
Yeah.
hopefully, ideally, whoever's thinking about a retreat, you first vet out your host. Like, who is your host? Get to know your host however you can. Look for referrals and recommendations and reviews. Try to see and understand what is the offering. What does it feel like? What's the vibe feel like? don't be afraid to say, hey, can I have a Zoom chat with you or whatever? Like every host who hosts and is worth their weight should be, yeah, absolutely. Let's chat if you'd like to chat.
Yeah.
And so just feel that out to make sure that it does match up with you. If you're one of those people who are looking for like wine and yoga and fun, hey, that's my retreat, but maybe you aren't. Maybe you're one that's looking for like silence and meditation and prayer and solitude, and that's a whole different vibe, and that's beauty as well. And
Yeah.
so just making sure that the vibe is matching up with what you're looking for, but also don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone a little bit. I'm woo woo a little bit. I believe in energy wholeheartedly, but I also am backed up with a lot of science. I'm super,
Yeah.
my mindset is all about, the way that our brains work and how the wiring works and neuroplasticity and how we can rewire this trauma. But we're also doing some yoga and we're doing some breath work. And then we're also going to have a glass of wine and sit around the pools and chit chat. And so just kind of knowing what you're looking for, but don't be afraid to get a tiny bit outside of that comfort zone because that is, where we're going to grow. And so, and making sure that it just matches your ideals and your beliefs. And then where is it? Like, is it someplace you want to go? I mean, I host in Tulum, Mexico. I host in Italy. I host in Florida. I host all over the place. And so, might also just, have fun with it. There's so much fun, in
Yeah.
attending and hosting retreats. And then, yes, now I'm at the space too where I also teach other hosts. Like I said, I started 15 years ago. The market was a little quieter, and now the market's really noisy and
It's
busy. So it is hard for
booming.
people. Yeah, it's hard for people that's looking for a retreat because there is so much noise that goes back to that whole vetting process. But I teach other retreat hosts how to really make sure that they're doing this in a way that's impactful, but also that it's profitable and
Yeah.
that it adds to their business model and that they really hone in on who they want to work with. Because I'm not a big fan of like market to everyone because I feel like then you're marketing to no one. And you need to really be
Yeah.
niched and who do you want to work with and who wants to be with you. So it's so much fun though.
I know I've been to a few retreats, not specifically yours. I'm excited to actually like do a honeydew treat or the honeydew team come down or something because
Yes.
Texas is beautiful. And recently for my birthday, I had like a relaxation, like into the country retreat at a friend's Airbnb. And it was like everything I needed. There was no Wi Fi. And it was actually, I told myself at first, like, oh, you're going to bring some work down there. And then when she told me there was no Wi-Fi, I was like, that's a clear sign from the universe, like disconnect. But it was like the disconnection that I really, really needed that helped me get back into my creativity. And ironically, I picked up another book about love, and love is a huge theme for me of like just like that self love and gifting that out. But it really did help me like recenter in the way that I didn't know I needed. And I
Mm.
ended up really like having this moment of like, you really need to let go. And it was a few areas of my life. I was like, it's time to let go because if you never let go, you'll never know if it's for you because you held on too tight. And that's not what you want. You want it to flow and go, come and go as it's meant. So I always encourage people to go to retreats. I will share personally, I do get nervous going into any new opportunity because I'm always like, what will come out of it? But it's always way better. Even if you're like, you felt rage or like some whatever you felt like, it's always telling you the story that's happening within. So I'm really excited to see and share even with our community any retreats you have going up. Also I want to ask you to share like how can people stay connected to you, how can they reach out to you to have a consult, like let me interview you about your next retreats, any books you have, how can they get surrendered to love, like tell us about how to stay connected with you.
Love it. You can definitely find the book on Amazon or my website, mindbodycomplete.com. And on my website, you can find all those details, my next retreats. I host about 6 a year. And if you're interested in hosting retreats, I'm so happy to help you launch your retreat career. I find that my calling today has shifted more into helping other people hold space because we need it so desperately. We need more and more and more people holding space a safe space for people to come and be who they are and feel like they're accepted for who they are and to be loved on for who they are, despite past or beliefs or all of those things, like just to be able to show up and put the mask down and put the heaviness down and just be. And so I'm super called to help people do that. But I also still love hosting retreats too. And so, yeah, you can find me at my ranch. I also host at least one beach retreat a year. And this year I'm doing Port Aransas at a beautiful luxury beachfront house. And so come join us.
I'm excited. So, just to leave everybody with a final message, what version of yourself are you most excited to meet in 2025?
Oh, I love this and I hate this at the same time because I am pushing myself this year, girl. I'm literally doing it afraid, and that's showing up more like this. I've been kind of
Yeah.
like the hermit behind the book and behind the website, and you have to like get to know me by coming to a retreat type of thing. And now I'm like, you know what, Shannon, I've got to put my face out there more, whether it's
Yay.
video and podcasts. And so I'll talk about serendipity because this is what I'm challenging myself with. And then you reached out in my DMs,
Yeah.
and I was like, see, surrender to that fear. And so that's the version of me this year is showing up exactly how I am and who I am and saying, I don't need to hide behind just words on a page that,
Yeah.
or, online courses and all that stuff. Like showing up for real is really cool. And so
Yeah.
I'm pushing myself out of my comfort zone to do that.
Well, I'm excited. You already did step one. You already took the first step. So, thank you for your time today. Thank you for inspiring our guest. I want to share inspiring our listeners, watchers, but I really, really like if there's a book that you can get through in just a few days that will like pierce your soul in a way, y'all please know it is Surrender to Love by Shannon. Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. And I hope we get to meet in person.
We will. We are going. I'm coming on a retreat.
Yes, I can't wait.
All right. Thanks, Shannon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, love.
Thank you for joining me, Jas Kirk, on Comfortable Conversations. Remember, the greatest gift life can offer you is discomfort. It's what shapes us, teaches us, and helps us grow. If today's episode resonated with you, share it with someone who might need it, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a conversation. For more information and updates, follow us on Instagram at Honeydew. That's HUNNIDUOE. Until next time, keep embracing life's challenges as opportunities to create your masterpiece. Your canvas is waiting. Go paint it beautifully.